Welcome to episode 115 of the Sports Geek podcast. This week I chat golf with John Sutherland from Golf Australia and Andrew Davies from the Golf Business Forum.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals.
And now, here's your host who's hurting because today was leg day, Sean Callanan.
Thank you very much, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan, and you are listening to the Sports Geek podcast. You might be doing it on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or my favourite podcast app, Pocket Casts. You can contact me on Sean at sportsgeekhq.com or on all social medias at Sean Callanan on most platforms, Twitter. And on the Snapchat, send me a snap. Tell me what you're doing, or send me a snap. Send a snap to Sports Geek HQ if you've got a sounds of the game, which Mark Cleary did. Later in the episode, you'll hear his snap from the LA Kings game now with the NHL playoffs underway. This week on the podcast, I'm going to focus on golf. Golf is not my game, but I am looking at the golf scene and the golf business and how it is tackling the world of digital. We've had Greg Oakford previously on the podcast. He went to SEAT last year and reviewed that, and he's from Golf Victoria. Today I'm going to chat with John Sutherland from Golf Australia to look at how Golf Australia has used digital to both tackle the events that Golf Australia put on with the Open, and also the grassroots movement and getting more people to play golf and to better enable golfers to connect with the game of golf. So it's good to catch up with John, who also went to SEAT last year and is looking forward to going to SEAT in Las Vegas this year. And then after that interview with John, I catch up with Andrew Davies as I'll be speaking at the Golf Business Forum in July, 25th and 26th of July, at Melbourne Park, talking about some of the opportunities for golf operators, golf courses, people who run golf programs, and seeing what digital can do to better connect golf golf digitally with both their fans, the people who consume golf and watch tournaments like the Masters and the Open and the like, but also the casual golfer, the person that goes out there and has a round of golf. How can a sport like golf better connect? So we'll talk about that both with John and with Andrew Davies from the Golf Business Forum on this Sports Geek podcast. But first, here's my chat with John Sutherland from Golf Australia. Very happy to welcome a good friend of mine from my hometown in Melbourne, from Golf Australia, John Sutherland. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sean. How are you?
Good, thanks. Now, you are head of digital and media at Golf Australia. What does that role entail?
It entails a fair bit of stuff, pretty broad scope, I guess, and I've been doing it for about 4 years. I guess we oversee a network of websites for both Golf Australia and the state associations. So we have 6 out of the 7 states on our platform, which is a content sharing platform. We run websites for the Australian Opens, both the Men's Australian Open and the Women's Australian Open, and we run a suite of websites for our participation programs, which is My Golf, the junior program, sort of the Auskick equivalent, Swing Fit, which is our female program, and Golf Month, which is our get into golf for sort of month of activities. So I guess I'm the webmaster and organiser and director of that network. I also oversee the media operations of the organisation in conjunction with our media manager, a guy called Mark Hayes. So we help the media with any of the requests that they have relating to getting access to golfers or getting access to golf clubs or getting access to staff at Golf Australia. We try and help them. We run media centres as well around some of the big events in the Australian Opens. And flowing from that, we have a pretty extensive content strategy that Mark and I oversee. So we generate a lot of content, written content, video content for that network of websites. And we also try and help some of the newspapers in Australia with content. You're probably aware that some of these newspapers are downsizing, and especially in areas that are seen as nice to have, like golf. So we do our best to try and support them and help them with content where possible as well. And we're lucky that Mark, the media manager, is from a journalistic background and was a News Limited journalist for a long period of time. So that works well. We also run social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Google+, and manage sort of databases, I guess, for Golf Australia and sort of the states as well. So I guess that's a bit of a snapshot of the role.
So that's all under golf.org.au, and that's the umbrella.
Yeah, the umbrella is golf.org.au. We do have channels for various things. We have a Oz Open Golf channel for the Men's Australian Open, the Emirates Australian Open. Women's Oz Open for the ISPS Hander Women's Australian Open. We have some separate websites for MyGolf, mygolf.org.au, swingfit.com.au and golfmonths.com.au as well. But yeah, I guess that's the umbrella, golf.org.au, and that's the gateway into a lot of those things, and that's where we put most of our time into around SEO work, and we hope that most people visit that and then are palmed out to those other things.
And that's the thing that's different being in that NSO land, so National Sporting Organisation that you are, in that you're charged with making sure people are playing the grassroots, the participation side of things, but then you've also got the tournament. So it's very similar to speaking to people like Tom Halls when he was at British Tennis and Kim Trengove at Tennis Australia. It's there would be people who just think that you just work when the Australian Open's on. That's just a really busy time for you, but you've also got these other masters to serve in getting more people to play golf, as well as the tournament. So it's a bit of a balancing act.
It is a balancing act, and I agree with what you say. The tournament space is probably the most visible thing we do, but we really only do that for a few weeks of the year. It is the time where we can maximise our traffic and really make some hay while the sun shines. We've got a lot of exposure on golf through that period. We've got the best players in the world who have come out here. So we work really hard in and around that time to try and maximise the amount of people who are interested in golf and Googling golf and wanting to engage in golf. But the other 11 months, I guess 10, 11 months of the year, we're doing other things more around the grassroots side that you talked about, more around, participation in junior programs and female programs and golf months and some of our amateur events for juniors and elite amateur players throughout the country, high performance stuff with our national squads and up-and-coming golfers. Rules and handicapping is a big area of the Golf Australia business, and we try to support that in media and digital and a lot of the club golfers around the country, of which there's a participation base of really 1.2 million people in Australia who play golf each year, and they're the type of things that they're interested in. They're interested in the rules, and they're interested in knowing about their handicap. The elite stuff is a hook when that's on, but you're right, it's only a small amount of the role.
And how important is data becoming to you in your role, and especially just growth and just the health of golf as an industry and as a participation sport? Because the perception, and I'm not a golfer, and I'm sure people who attend SEAT this year will soon find that out when we've got a golf networking event. But how does that help you better understand the golf market, where it is, the demographics, the people who are playing golf compared to the people who are consuming golf? How is that data equation becoming more important in your role?
Oh, it's extremely important, and it's also probably one of the biggest challenges that we have as an industry. We know, as I said before, that 1.2 million people play golf annually, and we know that 400,000 of those are actually members of golf clubs in Australia. So that leaves a huge gap of 800,000 people who we don't really have on a database, but we know they are golfers due to our market research and industry research. We know they're golfers. So we're constantly trying to think of ways to engage with that 800,000 social golfers. We've come up with social golf programs to try and give them some things that we think they'd be interested in, whether that be access to courses or maybe access to some form of handicap. We've joined up with Qantas to run the Qantas Golf Club, which is a social golf club which allows people to earn frequent flyer points and all those type of things. But more importantly to us, it allows us to potentially start to create a database of these social golfers and communicate with them. We've also explored other areas, and we look at some of these connected stadiums and things like that and think, would those type of things work in golf clubs where people are willing to hand over a little bit of information about themselves to get access to free Wi-Fi and things like that? So would that work in the golf club environment? We're not sure. It's something we're exploring. Apps, are there any apps that we could create that would help the social golf experience that people will be willing to download and maybe give us some data about, so we can just start to really build and know a lot more about that 800,000, because at the moment it's a little bit of a challenge for us and a bit of a black hole.
And from a participation point of view, is golf a when you go to the footy, you'll take a photo and show that you're there, or if you're going out, you'll have you'll brag you're there, and you might post something. Are golfers a socially active group, not from a social playing, but from a social media point of view? Are they posting or tweeting? Is there a preferred platform? How is a social media golfer? What's their profile sort of look like?
Yeah, we think they are. I guess we don't have any hard facts to say that they are, but anecdotally, and the amount of time we've been consuming Twitter, Facebook and these type of things, and see that people are posting a lot about golf. Instagram's a great vehicle that we've used. But yeah, we don't have any hard and fast facts, but it's something that we monitor. We try to engage as much as possible with anyone who does mention the word Golf Australia, and it's a long, slow process. I guess when I started 4 years ago at Golf Australia, I guess we only had 100 or so followers on our Twitter account, and I think 100 or so people on our Facebook page. We've grown both those communities to into the 40,000 now for Facebook, and just clicked the other day over 15,000 for Twitter. So that comes through a lot of hard work, and that comes through engaging with anyone, I guess, that we see on social media who's mentioning the word golf, handling in Golf Australia. We're liking, we're retweeting, we're engaging with those people. So to answer your question, I'd say yes, we think a lot of people, and we think Twitter and Instagram especially are two mediums that people seem really keen on using. But yeah, we're not 100% sure. If I couldn't give you an exact number. Yeah,
I mean, it seems to me I'm doing a bit of investigating of the industry. I'm speaking in July at the Golf Business Forum, and I sort of see the golf courses sort of being likened to stadiums in Australia to a certain degree, and the fact that the stadiums were sort of the last of the sporting codes to sort of jump on the social bandwagon, and they did have all the football clubs and all the cricket teams sort of dragging the fans into the social platforms. And so to a certain degree, it's the courses that sort of need to embrace the channels to realise that there are people tweeting that they're playing, or there's nothing more picturesque than a golf course. So it does lend itself perfectly to Instagram, and it's just a bit of understanding that to scratch below the surface and go, oh wow, we have got all this content that the golfers are sharing that we just need to aggregate a bit. And I know that you do it around Golf Australia. Greg Ofer does it around Golf Victoria and around the Vic Open and things like that. It's just that you getting more participants in the space, sort of engaging in the space, will rising tides lift all boats. I think that's sort of the space where I sort of see golf.
It's a really good point, and I think we see the clubs as leading that charge as well. We've done a bit of a national road show around Australia, presenting to a lot of the golf clubs in Australia on these tools and how to use these tools and the best way to engage with both their members and potentially new members using these mediums. The thing that you do have with golf clubs is very mixed levels of competency from administration point of view, from a social media administration point of view in the golf clubs. A lot of these golf clubs are run by volunteers or understaffed and those type of things. So social media up until this point has probably been seen as a nice to have in a lot of the golf clubs in Australia. But the more we keep reinforcing the message and getting in front of clubs and telling them how important these things are, how they're not a fad, how the next generation of your membership is sitting in the Twitter sphere and sitting on Facebook and sitting in Instagram, the more that's going to start working for them. But again, it's a slow burn and it takes time, but it's about education, I guess, we think, with the clubs.
Yeah, and that's, to talk about Golf Business Forum, that's sort of why Guy and Andrew have sort of brought that together to sort of have that discussion with golf course owners and operators, and obviously that's a really big part that you're invested in because you want to see the success of all those clubs and all those courses and the operators. What's Golf Australia's not only involvement, but what kind of discussions do you want to see at the Golf Business Forum?
Yeah, we think the Golf Business Forums, firstly, it's a great idea. And secondly, relating to the point I just touched on, it's just really important that these owners and operators of the public facilities in Australia, they're the ones who actually deal with this 800,000 that I mentioned a minute ago. So they're really at the coalface of educating the importance of social media tools and giving them a helping hand, really, and pointing them in the right direction to say that, hey, this is where your next batch of members are hanging out, or this is where your next batch of people who are going to pay green fees next Saturday are hanging out. So, we see the Golf Business Forum as playing a great role, and similar to the role we played with a lot of the private clubs in Australia or the member-based clubs in Australia. It's just about education. I'm sure you'll get that message across as well.
Yeah, and I think, what I'm excited about, it just, other than me talking, just the concept around collaborating, just the fact that you can get all of these different people in the room. You don't know exactly what may come of it, and I think that collaboration aspect, getting these people talking, whether it's and having clubs that are of different levels, like you said, some will have the resources and some won't. And I can rewind the digital clock back to 2010, and that's how AFL clubs and NRL clubs were. They didn't have the resources, so it's just a matter of saying, you can get to this. And I always use the example of Peter Stringer story at the Boston Celtics. They started their whole social digital department by putting a video camera on an intern's shoulder, and it grew from there because they produced the content, they started engaging their fans, they saw results. Those results became commercial results, whether it be in ticket sales, and in this case green fees or memberships or data, which I think is going to be really important. I think that's the real key benefit.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Yeah, you have to start somewhere, don't you? I think we're saying this message to a lot of these clubs. 3 or 4 years ago, everyone was like, okay, we've got a lot of other things that are more important to worry about than setting up a Twitter account and a Facebook page. But I think the message over time is really sinking through. So I think that the Business Forum will be a great success. So I think it's the first time that these guys have actually got together as a group. A lot of the member-based clubs in the private courses have a biannual get-together, and where they do a lot of knowledge sharing and do a lot of these things. But for the public facilities and public operators, I think it's a really great step forward. And credit to Guy for setting this up. It's been really good.
Well, one other thing, speaking of conferences, last year you went to SEAT in San Francisco. As a first time attendee, then what were some of your takeaways from that? Sort of learning what's happening in the pro scene, in the college scene, and also in the stadium and venue space.
Yeah, I thought it was a great conference. I guess it was two parts, wasn't it? It's a matter of listening and to be able to sit there and listen to the Golden State Warriors who've just won the NBA championship, and people from the NFL and the Chicago Cubs and the Lawn Tennis Association and the Atlanta Hawks, who were actually the most impressive that I thought. I think it was Peter Sorkoff was absolutely brilliant with his reinventing and reimagining of the whole Atlanta Hawks brand. There was just a listening and sitting there and taking notes, I guess, and to hear people from YouTube and Google and all those type of things was great. But it was also a meeting point as well, I guess. And I know us Aussies stick together a little bit, but I met so many really good, interesting people from the industry, both from all around the world and also from Australia. People at Greyhound Racing Victoria, we had the AFL, the Melbourne Storm, we met the guys from ECAL and a lot of the franchises in the state. So, yeah, it was that mixture of both, I reckon. It was just a really good, you just sat there listening and taking notes for long periods, and then when that finished, it was just a matter of who's on my table and let's have a chat and let's exchange business cards and collaboration, which is, I think, where majority of learning takes place. Yeah,
we're at the process of putting the agenda together now, but it's the agenda is really important. It hits on all the hot topics in the CRM space, the digital space, the latest in tech. But yeah, I think I get most of the value in the networking events and the actual deep dive conversations that you end up having. Either over breakfast at lunch or later in a bar at one of the networking events. So that's, to
and the
me,
fact that it's in Las Vegas has nothing to do with the fact I'm going, by the way.
This year in Las Vegas, it's always a good place to attend. And as I was referring to before, one of the networking events is at Top Golf. So I'm sure you'll do. I'm sure you'll do well. Last year we did well with the softball at AT&T, but
that was fantastic.
I think I'm going to try to draft yourself and Greg Oakford across to my team to maybe give myself a chance.
Don't expect too much with myself and Greg Oakford. We may work in the golf industry, but we're not fantastic golfers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we try our best.
I'll finish up. I'll finish up with 5 quick questions just to wrap up the interview. Thank you very much for taking the time. What was the first sports event you attended?
I think it was a Carlton versus St Kilda match at Waverley Park when I was probably 12 or 13. I reckon it's the first one I remember anyway.
And who are you following at that time?
I'm a big Carlton fan, so that set up on the right foot.
They would have been good back then.
They were half decent back then.
Yes.
Yeah, we won't talk about the current side, but anyway.
Favourite food you've ever consumed at a sporting event?
I'm very traditional, just a 4 and 20 pie, I think, does the trick at the footy.
Yeah, that's in mine as well. If someone says nothing says I'm back in Melbourne like a pie sauce at the MCG.
Correct.
The first app that you open in the morning?
I do check Facebook quite a bit. Facebook and Twitter, but I think I leaned to Facebook first just to see what's going on in my world.
And now the thing is, now you've got a newborn, you can be checking it all times of the day.
Yeah, exactly right, yes.
And who should the Sports Geek podcast listeners follow and why? Who's someone that you're always following or reading?
Well, I guess I'm biased, but my media manager, Mark Hayes, is one of the most knowledgeable people about the game of golf that I know and have ever met. So I think anyone out there who has even just a passing interest in golf should do yourself a favour and follow Mark. We're trying to get his followers up as well. But you would learn a lot about the game at all levels, juniors in Australia through to what Jordan Spieth did wrong on that hole that cost him the Masters. So I'd suggest give Mark a follow, Mark Hayes.
All right, well, we'll add Mark Hayes' Twitter handle to the show notes.
Media manager of Golf Australia.
And lastly, what's your social media platform MVP?
Social media platform MVP. I don't even know where to start with that one.
Are you in the camp of Facebook is the one you go to get a result, or is Twitter the place that works for you?
Yeah, I think I have a real soft spot for Facebook. It's the one that I've put the most time into and love into at Golf Australia. Others have looked after the other accounts on Twitter and Instagram. We've got good results there, but I think Facebook has been my little baby, and I've been very happy with the results we've achieved over 3 or 4 years, and the growth's been fantastic. So I think that's I've got a soft spot for Facebook.
No worries. Thank you very much, John. We may see you on the golf course, but more likely we'll see you at a conference, both at SEAT in Vegas and then at the Golf Business Forum, both in July.
Sounds good, Sean. Thanks for the chat.
You're listening to the Sports Geek Podcast. Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.
One of the things I'm trying to do in the podcast is, especially around my speaking gigs, I'm very happy to be speaking at the Golf Business Forum on the 25th and 26th of July. And what I want to do is preview a bit of those speaking gigs, and so my audience, you guys listening, know a little bit more about it, and also potentially the new audience, the people coming to the conference, will also know a little bit about me. So today I've got in Andrew Davies from Golf Business Forum. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sean. We're very pleased to be having you at the Golf Business Forum.
Yeah, so first of all, give us a bit of background in your world, how you got into golf, why are you part of the conference overall?
Sure. Well, I'm one of the people in golf who has a rubbish golf swing. There's lots of people in golf who can swing the club well. I'm not one of those. I got into the business side of the game about 10 years ago through a family business as the owner of a golf course, which all my mates thought was pretty fantastic.
So where's your yacht parked? Did you just pull up with your Lamborghini? How does someone own a golf course?
Yeah, it sounds much more glamorous than it is. At the end of the day, it's like any other business. It was part of a family business. business that my wife and I took over running about 10 years ago. And very quickly, the glamour of standing on the first tee and thinking this is all ours wore off, and the reality of business kicked in. And golf courses are challenging businesses. They're very capital intensive. When things go wrong, they tend to go wrong on a large scale.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, they're hospitality businesses. And we took a few years to get our heads around it, but we really evolved our business towards looking after people both on the golf course and particularly in functions and weddings, which is a space that many golf courses move into.
It's very much that misconception of the glamour of the sports business. Oh, you work in sports, it must be so awesome and that kind of thing. But, you know, that second part of the word, in your sense, golf business, sports business, it's the business side of it that you have to work on to make it work. You have to sort of put aside the supposed glamour, and it's very hard to do air quotes on a podcast. But for the people listening at home, I just did air quotes. So what's the objective of the Golf Business Forum then?
Well, really, the Golf Business Forum is about connecting people who are in the business of golf, focusing on both owners and operators, to get them together into one room for probably the first time in Australia, to share some intelligence, share some innovation, hero some facilities that are doing really interesting things, and do what you usually do at conferences like that, which is make some really important connections.
Yeah, so, I mean, that was really good when I caught up with yourself and Guy, who was also behind the Golf Business Forum, in trying to understand what you're trying to deliver, but then also I was trying to get my head around where the golf industry is at. Like, you know, we can see what's happening with the Masters and the coverage of that, but it's also, you know, you're looking at it from that grassroots sport, the average day golfer, the hacker, and that kind of thing, and how the golf industry can better serve that audience.
Very much so, Sean. I think that in Australia, people hark back to the glory days of when Norman really built the profile of the sport. And to a certain extent, the industry is perceived as waiting for the next Norman. The reality is very different. The organisational bodies in golf are doing some fantastic programs about driving participation, and the facilities are getting increasingly more present in the modern marketplace. You'd be aware that there are some big trends in sport driven around how people want to participate.
Yep.
And the one that we always look at is the idea of 24-hour gyms, that big trend that people want to do things when they want to do them, less in a structured way, more in a very flexible way.
We're very much in that on-demand society.
Correct.
Yep.
And typically golf hasn't responded well to that. We have looked back at that hero time of Norman when the profile grew. But you've only got to look at the modern champions and the Tiger Woods phenomenon, and in more recent years, the growth of the success of Jason Day and Adam Scott.
Yep.
That profile is still there. People get passionate about the Masters. It's on so many people's bucket list to go and see the Masters. So there's a real passion for it, but that doesn't necessarily translate in the same way that it used to people dusting off the clubs. What's of interest to us is how people are participating now and the new formats of golf that are driving people to pick up a golf club.
Yep.
And that's where, in particular, we're interested from a facility or a business perspective in saying, well, if I'm a traditional golf course, how can I offer a way for people to engage with my facility and my business that isn't necessarily just 18 holes of golf, which is not to diminish the importance of 18 holes of golf. It is a fantastic thing. Yeah,
but we are moving into a space where experiential marketing and fan experience and customer experience is really something that, you know, retailers are focusing on, sports are focusing on. I was talking to former guest Kenny Lauer from the Golden State Warriors. They're building out a new stadium, and they're trying to say, how can we make sure the stadium and the technology and the mobile experience makes it the best experience you can have? How has the golf industry progressed in that space? Where do you see them in that maturity model?
Well, really, it's about, in the golf industry, the evolution of a club member.
Yep.
So the idea that in order to get access to a good quality golf course, you need to be a member, well, that's no longer the case. In the top 10 golf courses in this country, more than half of them are easily accessed by the public. So the first wave of change was the introduction of these really high-quality public golf experiences. What's now happening or needing to happen at a greater rate is that these public golf facilities need to start engaging with the fans. And that's where the golf industry has been probably a little bit slower to adapt, where they're really engaging not just in terms of, here's my golf course, here's my green fee, come along and play one day,
Yep.
but why are you engaging? When you do engage, bring down a group of mates, make a day of it. Here's the additional things we can do to make this day fantastic and memorable for you. And after the day, we want to engage with you online in particular to share the word of what a great day out you had.
Yep.
That sort of fan engagement, and I use the word fan very deliberately because people tend to be fans of golf courses. Quite often it's where you had a good round.
Yes.
But it's often to do with you had a great day there or you particularly love the course. Well, they're fans. So how do we as a golf industry engage with our fans? That's something that we need to do a lot better and look to the leadership of some of these pro sports, especially in the States. Some of the stuff that you've reported on blows my mind how big these facilities are.
Well, and that's the thing, like, recently been handing out Gary Vaynerchuk's book to clients, and what he talks about in one of his earliest chapters is the clouds and the dirt. And so the clouds is the big strategy piece, the bird's eye view, what's happening. But just as important is the dirt, the execution of the tiny little things that make a difference. And that's where I see at the moment. It's going to be sort of part of, a bit of a preview mode, but it's going to be part of what I discuss at the Golf Business Forum. You need to know what you're trying to do. And so having an overall strategy of this is why we want to engage, because it's not like every course can roll out a strategy that the Rabbitohs are rolling out with a big content team and doing all this great content and video pieces and all that kind of stuff, because it's a resourcing thing. But they can go, what do we want our fans and golfers, and sort of mixing that audience together to say, what do we want them to do? And it might be something as simple as, we want you to celebrate your score. We want you to post your card when you've had a great round, or we want you to take a shot of everyone's tee shot on the specific hole. Those like that. That's the dirt stuff. That's the how can we do these little things that make our fans. And I love developing the digital cheer squad, because all your golfers, they've all got a smartphone. They're all connected. They're following the Adam Scotts and the Jason Days on all the channels. How can they bubble up that conversation? I think that's the opportunity that golf has, and that's the bit that they can leverage, so they can pick and choose. These are the channels that are going to work really well for us, for our fans and our golfers to tell the story. And so that's where I think that there's an opportunity. And the whole how far are we starting back? Like, we're so far behind everybody else. The good thing is, with all the platforms that are available, it's so much easier to catch up.
Look, absolutely. And golf has one other big advantage, which is it's a very visual medium. So when people are looking to be engaged fans online, they tend to be sharing really great imagery. And that's, again, your audience doing your marketing job for you. Platforms like Instagram are an absolute winner for golf. And one of the easiest ways with minimal resources is simply to set up an account, but make sure you're engaging with it as well. Too many facilities will have social media channels, but simply let those channels exist. And as you would well know, they don't exist on their own. They need to be activated.
And that's the thing. You can turn on tools like if this, then that. I've spoken about it on the podcast previously. And you can be saving every single photo that gets shared, on a geolocational spot. But even better, if you, as the golf course, are going and liking and commenting on every single post, and it's not going to be, you're not going to get thousands. It's not like the SCG when Australia beats England and then there's this flood of content coming in. It can be done on a Monday morning. How many photos did we get in this week? And the simple act of going and liking and commenting on those photos locks in those players to do it next week and the week after. And it's a really easy, people are looking for, what metrics should we be following? One of the big metrics for Instagram for me is how much are you engaging? How many photos are you liking? Because if you're liking more, then more content's coming in. And it's a simple weekly metric that sort of, tells you a person. You're not going to have a dedicated social person, but it is something you can do over your morning coffee on a Monday.
Look, absolutely. And one of the advantages of having someone on your facility for 4 or 5 hours, and one of the KPIs we set at our golf facility is that we want to be the first to like every photo, which has a double benefit. It encourages people to take more, and it also means all their friends who are interacting with that photo have seen our like or our comment first.
Exactly.
There's some real advantages to the time that golf takes. And again, there's a big story that golf takes too long, and that does conflict with the trend of people wanting to engage in sport informally and sometimes in short bursts. But at the same time, sure, that's a challenge for golf. It also represents some great opportunity. If you've got someone on your facility for 4 or 5 hours, you should be thinking about how can I engage with them really meaningfully, both during that time, before and afterwards.
So getting off, I guess, my area of interest in the social and digital space, what are some of the other things, sort of the hot topics you expect to be discussed at Golf Business Forum?
Look, certainly customer communication and engagement is a huge one. Most golf courses, again, will have got on board the email distribution. There'll be email marketing. But what they'll often be doing is sending out maybe a monthly newsletter, what's on. And quite frankly, if you're not segmenting your database and thinking about the person who plays once or twice a year isn't much interested in the Saturday comp.
Yep.
Maybe they're interested in another reason to come back and bring some friends. You really need to be thinking quite in a very high level of detail about your customers, and you should have the technology and the time to put into that. So again, sure, we're all online, but we need to be engaging much more on a one-to-one basis or a perceived one-to-one basis. And there are plenty of tools out there to do that. One of the other big topics that we're particularly interested in is pricing. We think that increasingly golf courses have stuck to rack rates.
Yep.
They might offer some weekend premium rates, some concession rates at different times. But we've got a couple of pretty huge industries, in particular the hotel and airline industries, who run the same sort of business, which is a big fixed cost based business. They've been showing us for years how to manage yield.
Yep.
And we've not been paying attention. And increasingly we're starting to, and that's a huge opportunity for facilities to drive revenue, is thinking, again, in quite specific detail about times of the day, peak demand periods, how can I be managing my pricing to drive the behaviours that I want out of my customers. Huge topic.
Oh, completely. Like the whole dynamic variable pricing equation is one that, there is money to be made, and look at the airlines and the hotel industry and what they've done. I think the other piece is how you go and frame that piece out to the market. Because, we look at, in this market, the AFL in a couple of instances doing variable pricing, and because it was, effectively mishandled in the media, and it became headlines like blockbuster tax, and it sort of got everyone's back up. Again, how you go about managing that message and getting that message out is really important.
Look, absolutely, and it's certainly not about gouging during those demand periods.
Yep.
It's as often as not about creating lower rates during the lower peak periods and encouraging those people who might be more time flexible to move.
Yep.
Which simply frees up the peak periods for maybe $1 extra. It doesn't. We're really. I couldn't agree more that it can create a bit of fear and loathing, the idea of demand pricing. In fact, it's a simple opportunity to start managing your tee sheet in a much more active way.
Yep.
And again, facilities will do that. A good operator will be well aware if Easter's falling earlier this year than last year, that's going to change the dynamic of the March and April months.
Yep.
What's probably missing is enough action on that, is people actually sitting there and saying, well, now what can I do about this knowledge? How can I change my business strategy?
And that's definitely something that we're seeing in the CRM space in sport. And back to your point of capturing emails, segmenting your database, understanding your fans. Because again, anytime someone's putting out a piece of content, whether it's an Instagram picture or a Facebook post or an email, you really want to be asking yourself, why does my fan want this, and what do I want them to do? And that should stop bad content. It doesn't always, but it should, when you're sending out here's what's happening in the comp on the weekend when I'm a twice a year hack golfer. I don't care. So that data piece helps set the table for everything from a content point of view, but then it informs you so much around the pricing stuff.
Look, absolutely. And it's also about valuing the different customers. So again, the typical experience in golf has been about really focusing on the super regulars and maybe even steering them towards a membership category.
Yep.
What we are trying to push is the idea that someone who might only play twice a year is just as valuable. Sure, they don't offer the same absolute revenue, but they're part of the mix. Getting them back next year for those 2 games, or maybe getting 3 or 4 games out of them, is a huge win. And the way you do that, as you mentioned, is totally different to the way in which you're communicating to the person who's playing every week.
And it's really important on that point is, it gives growth, because if the funnel says everyone who plays must become a member, then, and it doesn't apply again to me who might play twice a year, then all the marketing or all the communication you're putting to me are wasted. Whereas if you get 5, 10, 20 of me, it's potentially more valuable. I've seen that in the sports sense, especially in such a membership focused town as Melbourne is. That's what the footy clubs sell. That's what the A-League clubs sell. That's what the NRL teams sell. And so it's a real mentality. But if you can have more people buying single game tickets and buying them multiple times, then more people will attend your games. I think the same thing applies from a golf point of view, and the data will tell all.
Absolutely.
How much, what people are spending, how much they're doing. And when you've done that analysis, you can decide, well, hang on, maybe our marketing effort should be to be getting 1,000 people just to be playing more casual rounds of golf, because the data will tell us that once they've played 5 times, they might start thinking about being membership, or they just might be a 5 times a year player.
And that has strong implications for the traditional golf club business as well, which for too long was reliant financially on people that took out memberships but didn't play.
Yep.
And there are other industries such as the personal fitness have figured out that a member that takes out a membership and doesn't use it is bad for business, because you'll just create a lot of churn. Golf industry had the benefit of some high demand for these exclusive clubs that meant churn was probably limited. But the reality now is that with the rise of so many quality public golf courses, people don't need to take out a membership. Therefore, it really is about providing people with a valued experience, whether or not they're a member or a once-a-year player. The modern golfer, especially those in the younger generations, is organising themselves. We've seen the growth, and this is another topic we'll cover, we've seen the growth of social golf clubs, which might be a group of 10 people from work, might be a group of 10 mates, it might be a group of 300 people who've been organised online. They're huge drivers of golf. They're huge participation numbers.
And they're things that weren't, they were hard to do.
Correct.
As little as 5 years ago, because it would have been one guy or girl that's managing an email list, email, and there'll be these long emails that go out. Whereas now, a Facebook group can be set up and saying, here's what we're doing, who's in, and the tools are just there for those groups to pop up.
And they've been good for the game. Interestingly, we felt as they grew that it would create downward pressure on green fees because they represent purchasing power. But in fact, what many of the social groups want is guaranteed bookings, often a year in advance, so they might plan their whole golf calendar.
Yep.
And they, for the most part, they respect the fact that in order to secure a solid block of tee times on a Sunday morning, they're going to pay a certain rate and they'll commit to it. They're very good for business. They organise themselves, and the industry is increasingly taking notice and working out how to engage with them. Because in effect, all they are is a traditional golf club without a golf course.
Yep.
Which, when you look at it that way, you realise that some of the bad press in golf and the idea that private clubs are struggling, well, the golf member is just reorganising themselves and potentially not needing a facility. And the traditional private golf clubs need to respond to that by changing their offer to appeal to a broader group of people. And there are some great success stories in that space as well.
Yep. And it is a matter of that customer experience. It's just getting fragmented. Previously, it was a one-to-one. I'm a golfer and I'm with that club. And now, as like you said, the rise of public clubs and there's more availability, the power is sort of shifted to the golfer and they can pick and choose. So that's, if you want a similar analogy, go look at the TV stations and pay TV and what the streaming services are doing. It's the same thing that's happening in the golf space. There's a lot of change, and it's just a matter of adapting.
Look, I agree, and I think that there are some great hero facilities that we also want to celebrate. Facilities like Wembley Golf Complex in Perth is a magnificent, dedicated public golf facility, 36 holes of golf, 80-bay driving range. They're currently building a huge hospitality centre. Council-owned and operated, great example of leading public golf. And you've got other facilities like Yarra Bend in Melbourne, Moore Park in Sydney, and there's several up in the Gold Coast from Vic Park to Parkwood International and a few others. So there are examples of facilities that are offering heaps of different ways to engage. The rest of the industry can learn from them, but more importantly, the industry can also learn from outside golf. to their credit, the key organising bodies in golf are engaging with this event as well in their own efforts to really engage with the public golfer. By several different measures, roughly 2/3 of the couple of million golfers in Australia are what's called public golfers.
Yep.
They might be playing week in, week out in a social group. They might have handicaps and be incredibly passionate golfers, but they're choosing not to be members of golf clubs. And that's a really significant number of people.
So who should be attending Golf Business Forum?
Well, we've focused on really the idea of owners and operators. Operators could be anybody from a manager of a traditional private golf club who's taking a lot of public golf through different channels, to the manager of a local public golf facility or a driving range, mini golf facilities, virtual golf, which is another huge growth area. I met a guy the other day who had almost a $2,000 set of golf clubs, never played golf on a green grass golf course.
Wow.
Only virtual golf. If people think that that's just a very small area, they're kidding themselves. It's growing hugely.
Yep.
So operators of all those kinds of facilities will have a lot to learn. But we're also interested on the ownership side, and in particular local government sector, who we would describe as a general statement as a reasonably absent landlord in this space.
Yep.
Many of them will outsource management, and that's absolutely fine. It's a specialist skill. But what happens is that in the long term, when it comes to needing to reinvest in their golf facility, if they haven't engaged, if they haven't stayed close, then those investment decisions become very challenging because you can be talking quite significant ratepayer dollars.
Yep.
So we're really looking to engage with the local government sector and get them to come along as landlords or, in some cases, operators.
Terrific. And if you are in that space, if you work in the golf business, you're an owner, operator, work in the golf industry overall, it may be in Melbourne on July 25 and 26. So I'm home. I've got my fingers crossed that there won't be any flight delays coming back from SEAT in Las Vegas. Coming back for this, golfbusinessforum.com.au. Andrew Davies, thank you very much for coming along to the podcast, and look forward to the conference.
Thanks, Sean. We're looking forward to hearing you speak as well.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to John Sutherland and Andrew Davies. The links to follow both John Sutherland and Golf Australia and Andrew and the Golf Business Forum will all be in the show notes. That'll be at sportsgeekhq.com/115. And if you are in the golf business, golf interested, a golf course owner, I'm looking forward to seeing you at the conference. It'll be held at Melbourne Park Function Centre, so right down the road from me here at Sports Geek in South Yarra. It's a short walk down to Melbourne Park or Rod Laver Arena, the function centre adjacent to Rod Laver Arena where the tennis is played. You can go to golfbusinessforum.com.au to check that out. I'm looking forward to seeing people there. If you're listening to this and you are heading there, please send me a tweet at Sean Callanan. I'm always trying to get a little bit more insight into the world of golf. I will be leaning on guys like John Sutherland and Greg Oakford to understand the golfer and the golfing world. So I look forward to that. I'll be on a jet back from SEAT going straight to that, so I will probably have a few of the latest and greatest from my discussions in Las Vegas with all the sports execs at SEAT conference. So that's I'm looking forward to seeing people there. Until next episode, I'd love to see you in our Sports Business Slack group. The Sports Biz Slack group's growing. I'm just checking in on it right now. There is 297 sports executives from around the world. Hopefully by the time this goes out, we'll hit the magic 300. I'd love for you to join us. Simply go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack or send that URL to your colleagues that work in the world of sport. If you haven't used Slack before, it's a really good way for you to understand how Slack can be used. I think it's a really useful collaborative tool for the world of sports. Loving the discussion in the digital channel. I'm just going to question without notice. I'm just going to jump into the digital channel and see some of the things that are being talked about. The Under Armour releasing a 3-second ad every time Stephen Curry hits a three this playoffs. There's some talk about the effect that Kobe Bryant's last game had, including the Lakers losing access to their account. Some people are experimenting with Snapchat filters and geo filters and seeing how they work, including Nike did one on the Staples Center around Kobe's last game. We've also got some really good discussions starting to happen in the sponsorship space, especially talking about the latest news around the NBA bringing ads to the front of the jerseys, whether that's good or bad or indifferent. I'm on the case of it's smart business. It has not affected, I guess, the brands of Barcelona and Real Madrid and AFL and NRL clubs having logos on the jerseys, and I think it's just a matter of time. The NBA is smart to go ahead early to get that money quickly, because obviously then MLB, NFL will follow. So it's a smart move in my opinion for Adam Silver. So it's a little bit of conversation around that happening in the sponsorship channel. The media channel has been really buzzing around the latest deals, where Facebook Live was pitching for the NFL, and then Twitter has come in. Good discussion there around how many users Twitter needs to get to make that $10 million deal that they did for those streaming rights to get more users. Are they looking at a cost per acquisition model? How many users do they need to get? And then we've also just got the reading channel, where there is a lot of great stuff being added along the way around what people are seeing happening, including the amount of video views in the MLB at Bat app. So I'm trying to develop FOMO, fear of missing out, and really, if you are listening to this podcast and you want a little bit more interaction with people who listen to the podcast and with myself, please join in. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Slack. I'm pretty much built it for people who work in the sports business, and I'm really pleased with just reading through the intros channel. So the intros channel is pretty straightforward. Once you join, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and what you're looking to get out of it. And it's great to see people like Max Slavin from the Detroit Tigers joining in. And I'm also really pleased to see several of the Sports Geek podcast guests, TJ Ansley, John McCauley, recently joined the group. And so it's really providing a really robust discussion on a couple of different channels. So looking forward to seeing you there. Until the next episode, my name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek. Stay tuned for the end of the podcast. As I said, Mark Cleary was at an LA Kings game, and he sent me the sounds of the game. You can do that too. Either send me an email, or you can send them via Snapchat to Sports Geek HQ, and I can download them and save them and include them on the podcast. Until then, cheers.
Like the Sports Geek podcast? Find us on facebook.com/sportsgeek. Check out which teams work with Sports Geek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients. Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes. Thanks for listening to the Sports Geek podcast.